Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's British Council Youth Connect live session. My name is Roman Tofis, and I'm very pleased to be hosting this conversation today. Youth Connect Live is a series of online live sessions for young people around the world with the specific aim of helping young people to develop the skills that they feel they need to connect with themselves, with their communities, and with the world around them. Thank you all for joining us today. And before we begin, we would love to know where are you joining from today. So please feel free to share with us your country or city in the Q&A section. To find the Q&A, please press more on the lower bar of your screen. Today's session will explore how community research can be a powerful tool for shifting power, amplifying underrepresented voices, and driving meaningful change. Luckily, I have to know, I'm quite familiar with today's speaker. As a part of the 90 Youth Voices network of the British Council, I had the opportunity to see for myself how her work specifically and how community research can change communities and influence the young people living there. Please note that this is only the first of the two connected sessions on the power of community research. Today we will be hearing from our guest speaker, and we will be having the Q&A session next Wednesday. But of course, that should not limit you from sending your questions in the Q&A section. As I said, it is on your lower bar of the screen, but be aware, please, that we will not be answering them today. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Miriam King, the co-founder and director of Living Proof, a creative engagement studio based in London. Miriam, thank you ever so much for joining us today.
Of course. Thank you so much, Roman, for having me as well. So nice to connect again and have this conversation.
Absolutely. And I would like to kick off the conversation maybe quite directly. When we
Mhm.
ask ourselves who gets heard, what are we really talking about? And where does the community research fit into that?
Yeah, I think when I think of that question, I always think of that kind of common phrase that we see that like young people are often listened to, but not necessarily heard. And I think when I think about research in that respect, like I think about traditional research and I think about, professional researchers or academic researchers going into communities, doing the research, and then presenting that research on behalf of communities. So almost like speaking for them. And what I love about community research is that it very much kind of flips that narrative. So, community research means that it's the communities themselves doing the research. So, rather than doing it on their behalf, someone doing it on their behalf, they're doing it themselves. And this is how, like, power can really be kind of flipped on its head. And then you get to hear directly, I guess, from communities on their own terms. So, they're deciding what's important and how their stories should be told, rather than someone who, may be professional or an academic researcher has all this years of, work experience. But I guess no one knows the depths and the lived experiences of a community more than that community itself. And yeah, community research allows those communities to be heard rather than someone speaking on their behalf, which is why, yeah, I think that who's heard is such an powerful place to start when we have this conversation, for sure.
Thank you. That's quite intriguing, considering that, of course, we have the established research, as you
Mhm.
highlighted, but also it is important. You've also partially answered my next question in terms of why it matters, because, as you said, it's a sort of a direct action by the communities. But maybe if I can ask you, how the young people themselves, who, as we can see around the world, are on the front lines, on the vanguard of trying to force change, how the young people may see community research. Why do you think it will be beneficial to them as well?
Yeah. I think like I'm such an advocate for obviously community research, but specifically young people leading community research. I think it gives having the tools that you can go into your community that you know personally and you have that lived experience as well, and being able to um, understand what's happening, understand what you want to change, being able to then go out and speak to people, gather all that information, and then be able to use that armed with the knowledge of your community to be able to challenge power and demand change within your local communities. And I think why it's so valuable, and particularly for young people, is like we think when I think about community research, I think about the trust and the like the real deep truths that you can get from that. Going back to like an academic researcher, they might go into a community, but how are they going to ensure that they can, get to people and get the real truth of the situation if they're strangers? Whereas if you have community researchers who are living in that community, who are participating in that community, you already have that level of trust. And I think that level of trust leads to like deeper insights, deeper truths, and therefore you can kind of build better solutions. And I think then young people are kind of in such an amazing place to be able to lead that research piece and then be able to go out and speak to their communities and demand that change as well. They have the lived experiences and usually the passion and the drive to make change as well.
I do agree with you actually in terms of in terms indeed. We the way that we live within our communities, we have much more indication, let's say, or
Mm,
idea of what's going on. And quite usually when I myself am attending certain social gathering, um, I've listened quite a lot this advice, start from the local. But if a young person, let's say, wants to truly start researching an
mhm.
issue that matters the most for them within their own community, where should they begin?
Yeah, it's such a good question and like I guess so practical as well. I think like you said, that starting point is like actually deciding like what is the issue that you care about, or like, and from there, like what is that research question? Like what do you want to find out? And ultimately like what change are you hoping to achieve? And by defining that and being clear of like what the topic or issue is, that really helps you to then take the next steps. And I guess maybe I'll use like a real life example of a project we've been working with local community and young people in London for like a big kind of nature charity. And the local community is trying to they have a new park that they're going to develop, and the charity wants to understand what should happen with the park, how should it be landscaped, for example. So the local community wanted to understand, okay, how does the community feel about their local green spaces currently? What's missing? What's working? So kind of defining that research question is like, how are the community feeling about this green spaces that already exist to then inform how the new park will be developed. And I think then the next step is to like, okay, this is the question we want to answer. Is there already existing information out there? And you'd be surprised that you could already find out a lot of information before going out and speaking to people. And that really helps with like not duplicating the work as well. So, is there information from your local council or local libraries or local organizations? Have people done some of this research before that you could speak to as well? And then from there, the next steps is like, who do you want to speak to? So if we use the nature kind of green spaces example of the project that I was speaking about, yes, we understood it with the community that they wanted to speak to people who are using green spaces. They're kind of the number one people, but then also who are the people not using green spaces in the community and why are they not using them? I think that's a key part as well. Like you probably have the obvious people you want to speak to, but who are those people who maybe might be forgotten about or haven't been asked about something before? I think that's key. And then deciding how you want to speak to them as well is a good next step. So when we think about research, we think about research methods. So things that come to mind might be like surveys or interviews, but think about other creative methods as well that you might be able to use if you're trying to reach different age groups, for example, like could you do creative activities for kids? Could you do, you know, a cooking activity with older residents? Thinking outside the box as well of how you can reach those people, I think is also a really good starting point.
Do you think that, for example, that research needs to be like similarly formalized on par with formal research? Let's say if
Mhm.
we are talking about the tips of doing it, does it need to be formalized in terms of like, if we are employing surveys, then
Mhm.
does it have to include multiple pages of research, or exactly what tips can we use, let's say, to also try to keep it appealing for young people as well?
Yeah, I think the starting point is being really clear, like I said, about what you want to find out, because that helps you narrow down your research then and like the questions you want to ask. And I think why community research is so important, but also can be really fun and engaging, is because I think communities are really good at thinking outside the box of how you reach people in your community. So, yes, you have traditional tools like surveys, interviews, focus groups. But other creative methods are just as valid and sometimes like overlooked and can actually give you even deeper insights. Like a tool we love to use is like photo voice, which means like, taking pictures with communities of areas that they love or that they don't like, that they would like to change, because you can use that image to form a narrative. And that also opens up access. So, thinking about accessibility, not everyone has the means, for example, to fill out a survey or attend an interview or a focus group. So, thinking of all the different ways that you can access people in ways that fit into their lives rather than being an added burden as well. I think even simple things like tips, like always having a notebook and pen on you when you're out and about doing your research, or like even having your phone on you to be able to record conversations, like being open minded and curious all of the time. Like you never know who you might meet on a day when you're out in your community. You never know who you might meet, even like online, for example. So always kind of be ready to have those conversations. Because sometimes those chance moments, you get like really, really good insights, or you end up speaking to someone that you didn't know could be valid in the research, and then it could lead you down a whole other train of research, which is, yeah, I guess exciting part of it too. You often don't know where it might lead when you start.
That is really exciting in a way that it allows also a sort of creativity, I think. That
100%.
is, I think, that one of the major advantages of that method, and say in general. But do you think, how do you see a meaningful involvement? Let's say if there
Yeah.
is a group of young people, um, and let's say we are splitting up the responsibilities. How do you see what meaningful involvement in your maybe experience, what it actually looks like, and how do you avoid the research becoming sort of tokenistic?
Oh yeah, being like avoiding tokenism is like a thing that I always think about, and it's such an important thing to mention and address. So thank you for bringing that up. I think when you think about making it meaningful from the beginning, is going back to the why the research is happening and why you want to do it, and being very like open and transparent about that why, but with the people who are doing the research, but also with the community that you're hoping to engage. Because I think if you're quite open and honest about that at the very beginning, people will be bought in and want to help. Because if you want to see that change because you're part of the community, chances are a lot of other people would want to see that change too. So you'll hopefully get, positive buy-in from the beginning by kind of being open and transparent. And it helps you, I guess, take people along the journey with you. I think that's another way of keeping a kind of meaningful, like rather than just asking people to fill out a survey and then they never hear from you again, explaining the background to the research, why you're doing it, and then asking them, would they like to stay updated, would they like to join another maybe community research event you're doing, So is there other ways that you can keep people or invite people to be involved further in your research as well? And I think the topic around tokenism, again, I don't think there's kind of, I think it's just something to always bear in mind. And the honest and transparency part helps, but also thinking about ethics is really important. So that trust and honesty part, but also thinking about like even this that we say simple things, but the things that really matter, like how are you collecting data? How is it being managed? Are you communicating that to people who are taking part in the research? And also thinking about things like informed consent. So yes, people might consent to giving you their information, or for example, taking a picture, but bearing in mind that they're able to remove that consent at any time. So I think those ethical considerations around doing research are really important and something that we kind of have to keep in front of our minds at every stage of the process and not just at the beginning. It's like every step you're taking, like making sure that everyone's being involved in a meaningful way and checking in with people, asking them how are they finding the process, what could be improved, like just having that open and honest dialogue with people who have taken part as well really helps to make sure that you're kind of staying on track.
I think now talking about all of these measures and steps that you have actually referred to, I think our audience will be quite intrigued to hear maybe of a particular example of community
Mm.
research. I've seen one in Stratford, it was pretty brilliant, in my opinion, from an area that was um, quite disadvantaged
Mm.
to be the epicenter of the Olympics in London. Um, can you refer what specific challenges you have encountered with, and maybe the outcome, what outcome it led to?
Yeah, of course. So I obviously mentioned a project that we're doing at the moment around like green spaces in London, but I think another project that comes to mind, which is relevant, is we've been doing work with students in schools in London, but specifically schools for students that have been excluded from mainstream school. Um, and that's a whole project where we've been training those students in those schools how to do research. So we often refer to this as peer research. So students doing research with students. It's the same way as communities doing research with communities. Um, and that project has been amazing because we've actually been able to, spend time with students in schools. They're getting work experience in school as well. They're developing skills. What we've tried to do as well in those settings is make research link it as much to like future careers as possible. So to make it, I guess, engaging and fun and linking that, okay, you might want to do something totally different in your career. Like you might want to work in, for example, media or advertising, but actually research skills are needed for those careers. So making it really tangible for students as well. And they've been able to design the whole program themselves. So they've decided what topic of school that they want to research on. So we've had everything from mental health to future jobs outside of school to how can relationships between teachers and students be improved. And then they've been able to decide what research that methods they've used. They've done lots of focus groups, but also interviews, but also taking photos of their schools and then turning that into creative outputs. So we've had everything from magazines being made by students and different collages, films, so they can then, it's using that creativity as well, and then they have something tangible at the end of the research. And I think change that has been made is what's been really powerful for that program is the researchers, the students actually get to present their findings in City Hall, which is where decisions about Londoners are made. So it's like that's the goal. So it ensures that they take the research seriously and like there's an end goal that you're actually going to have a chance to speak to decision makers about the research findings and then how they can take those away to potentially impact policy as well. And then at a school level, they've been able to kind of shape little changes in their schools that will make things better for students. Like an example with the mental health project that some students did, what came out of the research is not every student would feel comfortable talking to someone like verbally about their struggles, but they've created these little mental health boxes, almost like suggestion boxes that are now active in the school that students can pop in a note. And again, it's a small tangible change, but that came directly from the research. And I think that also shows that, small changes can be just as powerful and important as like wider policy changes. And actually, that's why community research is so important, because it's the communities that know those little changes that can help their communities in big ways that maybe more traditional research may never kind of uncover. So yeah.
That I think really puts into the perspective of how community research and generally groups of volunteers, young
Mhm.
volunteers, started to be taken quite seriously.
Yeah.
That's a criticism I hear quite often, a lot here in Cyprus from my
Mm,
peers that, oh, even if we start doing something, how the politicians, for example, or other stakeholders will take us seriously. And I think that your answer gives us a very significant perspective of even that a small of action can provoke a broader interest within the public and, of course, the authorities themselves. Um, the
exactly.
last, yeah,
And
oh, sorry.
sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt,
yeah,
Roman. And I think what's important as well is that, these students have now learned how to do research at a young age in a school setting. And you'd hope that maybe, it's flicked a switch in them and they're like, oh, I might be able to make change in other areas or like other communities that I'm involved in as they get older, and that it empowers them to realize that they can make change. And community research is a practical tool that they can use and that they've now been trained in to be able to, it's a skill that they'll have now kind of going forward. So it's a thing that continues and builds as they get older as well, which is exciting. And the more people that learn how to do it, the better.
absolutely. I 100% agree with you, honestly. That's what I usually tell a lot of people, that you don't have to necessarily be fully proficient in something. It's a learning process itself. You
100%.
start learning and developing the skills, so you quite grow. It's a process of growth that never, personal growth that
Exactly.
never ends. But as a last question, I would like to ask you, what is the one particular thing you would want every young person listening to us today to take away or try
Mhm.
within their own communities, maybe after this session?
Oh, such a good question. I think I would challenge everyone, like all the young people listening, to even now, if you have a pen and paper, you have your phone, or you have even just in your head, is like think about that question that you would love the answer to, or think about that issue or problem or thing that you want to change in a community that you're part of. Like write that down and have it in front of you and have it in like in the front of your mind, because I think that's the starting point that everything can then jump off of. And from there, like I said, you can start to do research or like even online, like desk research about, have people already tried to answer this question? What information is out there on this topic already that can start to maybe inspire you or help you to build a case? And then that from there, kind of maybe decide like, okay, who do I want to speak to first about this? Who in my community would know about this or care about this topic? But I think the starting point is like getting it down of like, what is that thing? And I'm sure everyone on the call has something that they're passionate about that they would love to find out more about or make the change in their community. And it's just getting it down as the starting point and then deciding who you want to speak to, how do you want to speak to them, where do you want this information to go after, like who is that decision maker, whether that's on a really local level or a higher level in whatever kind of communities or countries that you're based in. Who are those people that you want to listen to your message, and how should you get that message across? And I think what's really powerful is like young people like have so much creativity as well around turning research into creative things that get people's attention. So, and I think that's the fun part as well, like, especially with online tools, with social media, it's like there's so many ways that you can bring the research to life and get your message out there and gain momentum and traction, and connect with each other across countries as well and share what you're doing with each other and inspire each other as well.
Ultimately, I think it all narrows down to a vision,
Yeah.
in my opinion,
Hmm.
that as long as you have the vision, you will see yourself through the other planning pillars, let's say, if I may
Mm.
call them. So you would start with, as you said, the question
Hmm.
or the issue that you care most about and want to see change. You will see the inspiration.
Hmm.
You will be inspired maybe of what specific approaches you would like to use, as you
Yeah,
said, and it will essentially return to the community.
exactly.
If I'm just summing up
Yeah.
our conversation,
Roman,
but
is there something for you that's not to put you on the spot, but is there a question or a topic that you're interested in learning more about in your community?
in my community, I'm more focused on environment, to be
Mm,
honest. I
yeah.
had much more experience on the environment. Cyprus, unfortunately, has a very grim future when it comes to the
Mhm.
environmental and climate change. So we try to push as much as possible the relevant stakeholders with specific targeted actions to
Yeah.
either legislate or start putting a cultural change when it comes
Mm,
to, for example, recycling, which
yeah.
we don't, which is not quite still established in Cyprus.
Yeah.
So we try to do different targeted ways as much as we can, and in a way that is also approachable to the policymakers. So we don't
Mm,
go. I think the essential is not to go for confrontation, but
exactly.
as a way to offering a solution, let's say. And
Exactly.
as long, I think the research, the community research will be quite helpful in that, in a ways that you gather your own information
Exactly.
from your own hot, like local spots to deliver on that.
Exactly. And ultimately, like community research should be like policymakers and decision makers should be seeing that as a gift. Like, your communities that you maybe oversee are telling you what they want rather than you having to go out and find it. So it can be such an enabler for change if decision makers kind of see it in that way rather than, like you said, it being kind of challenging or provoking. It's like, how can you work together? And community research is a really good tool to be able to do that.
And I think ultimately it also allows some expertise for young people
Yeah,
as well.
exactly.
And we see that with the expertise, young people start to become co-shapers of policies and not just
100%.
voices, not just agitating voices, but they are actually involved in the decision making. Um,
Exactly.
yes. Thank you so much, Miriam,
Thank you so much.
for sharing your experience and insight with us today. And thank you to everyone who joined our session
Mhm.
today. Please remember that there will be a follow-up Q&A session on 20th May, where we will be returning to your questions shared by the audience. Thank you once again, and we hope to see you at our next session.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Miriam.